New York Giant fans, we have a tough one in front of us. But I guess it's any given football game. I can't say any given Sunday. Well, because it's not Sunday, it's Thursday. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast, everybody. Hit that like button if you haven't already subscribed to all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or video drops. Appreciate you all coming back. Also share this out. And you know what? If you haven't already, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. And also share it out on podcast platforms, not just the YouTube platform, but also podcast platforms. We're trying to get some more downloads there. So, the New York Giants head to Santa Clara, California to play the San Francisco 49ers. This was always going to be an uphill battle for the New York Giants. And the 49ers have been dominating the NFL. I can't say dominate for a lot of reasons. The fact they haven't made it to the Super Bowl except for once they lost. But they've been at the upper echelon of the NFL for a couple of years now. Since like 2018, 2019. Really 2019, because that's when they made that big step forward with Jimmy G. He was healthy. They made it to the Super Bowl. They lost, though. But ever since then, they've been competitive, right? And then they put Brock Purdy in for Jimmy G when he got hurt. And he's essentially been doing Jimmy G things at a lower cost. Not to mention all the personnel they have offense and defensively. So that already overmatches what the Giants have, in my personal opinion, in terms of talent, healthy or not healthy. Now, coaching, that's a whole different story. I think the Giants' coaching this season has been interesting. Not great, not terrible. I mean, the 49ers are 2-0. They played the Steelers. They blew their ass out. And also, they played the Rams very well. So, this game, to many people, will be like a cross-off. And like, oh, the 49ers are going to win. Just look forward to Seattle. Well, here's the thing, folks. And I'm not saying this to hype up the Giants or any of that stuff, but I will need to see certain things from this game to tell me about this team. I know the expectation is the New York Giants are going to get their asses beat, which very well could be the case. But we need players to step up. I know there's a lot of hubbub going around about this player, that player, Twitter GMs, whatever. We'll talk about it. I might include it at the end, in the middle, something like that, because I think it's worth going over just a tad. But you can't play 2 quarters and expect to have a win. You can't start out like you did against Dallas. You can't start out like you did against Arizona and expect to win. That can't happen. It has to be 4 quarters, at minimum 3. The 49ers, again, are a top-tier team in this league. They have been. They will be. Their drafting has been good for the most part. They've really picked it up with these mid-round picks. George Kittle is one. Fred Warner is another. I believe Drake Greenlaw, too, amongst others. And they've signed some guys in free agency to help out there, Javon Hargrave being one. So let's get into the injury report before we get into anything else. So for the Giants, it was gamesmanship. Any Giant fan knows that. I'd be surprised if you didn't know that. Saquon Barkley, he is out with an ankle injury. If I'm being honest, I expect him to be back much after the Seattle game. I want him to be back for the Seattle game, but if we get Andrew Thomas back and maybe we could do some things, right? That, because I feel like Seattle is like a must-win game for us. I know we're thinking ahead here, but I think Seattle's a must-win game for us. If we get Thomas back that time, after this long break that we have, fine, whatever. But Saquon Barkley, he's out. He's going to be out for, I think they said up to 3 weeks, possibly 4. Ben Bredeson, the only reason he's not playing is concussion protocol. He was not able to break in time. I thought it was like a knee or a elbow injury or a calf injury. I thought it was something like lower body. And I'm like, that doesn't really look like a concussion, but they said it was a concussion. He's not going to play this week. It's going to be Mark Lewinsky at left guard. Micah McFadden, neck injury. He's questionable. He's a guy that needs to step up. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Azeez Ojulari, he's out. Yeah, I can't really be surprised with that one. Number one, he's injury prone. I'm going to say that right now. And it's a short week. So if he doesn't come back against Seattle, going to be honest with you guys, I might want the Giants to put him on IR because this guy has been a total zero for the Giants. This year, much of last year as well, and I get it. He had 5.5 sacks in 7 games, but man, how can you sit here and say, oh, yeah, we just got to wait for him to come back? This is not baseball, right? This is a year-to-year league in the NFL, and upgrades are wanting to be made at certain positions, and next year's next year. But anyway, Wan'Dale Robinson actually is questionable, and Jordan Schultz reported that he's probably going to play. Now, of course, probably not 100%, but factor him in with Paris Campbell and some of the speed on the field, and it could actually be pretty dangerous if the New York Giants, specifically Daniel Jones, know how to take advantage of this 49er defense because it's not all pro like it was in years past. Their corners have been playing decent. The front seven is the scariest, but they are known to give up yak and quick game yardage and stuff like that. And if the Giants attack them with some quick game, more play action, kind of like they did last week in the second half, I think the Giants can find a way to at least be competitive in this game. It's going to need a lot of different things to win this game, a lot of different components, a lot of different ingredients. But Andrew Thomas, he is out with a hamstring injury. I had a little bit of faith that he was going to come back for this game. I'm like, no, it's just not going to happen. So, let's go to team stats for 2023. The New York Giants are 23rd in total yards per game, 24th in passing, 13th in rushing, 28th in points per game. Defense, 15th, 9th against the pass, 26th against the run, 32nd points defense. And of course, that is a little inflated, being that the Giants gave up 40 against the Cowboys, and it was really 20. So you mix that with the 28, and you get whatever you come up with. I'm not here to do math right now. I'm here to tell you the stats. 17th in pass percentage, 16th in run percentage, 25th in pass percentage on first down, 6th in run percentage on first down, 3rd in blitz percentage, 20th in pressure percentage, and 32nd in sacks. They have not gotten a sack yet, nor have they gotten a turnover, which is going to be something we're going to talk about. The 49ers, offense-wise, 7th in total yards per game, 16th in the passing games, 3rd in the running game, which Christian McCaffrey, that should be an obvious one to most, and 4th in points per game. Defensively, 12th in total yards per game, 23rd for the passing game, 5th against the run, and 4th in points per game. 17th in pass percentage, 5th in run percentage, 28th in pass percentage on first down, 12th in run percentage on first down, 26th in blitz percentage, 5th in pressure percentage, 11th in sacks. So, what are we looking for this game? Actually, you know what? Before we go to things to look for, I want to talk about this little segment that was really coming out this week and talking about expectations of Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeaux, and Dory Jackson, all these different guys. I think a lot of people are jumping off the deep end on both sides. It's usually the way it is, right? You'll have those fans that take shit out of context and say, no, you guys thinking that, Neal and Tibbs and all these different guys are busts. And then you got the other side that's saying, no, you guys, they're a bust, stuff like that. You're always going to have those two sides that are just irrational. And it just happens. Like, it doesn't bother me. It's the natural part of the fan base. It just happens, right? But let's be completely honest with ourselves. The Giants were coming into this season expected to win more games than last year, if not the same, but they were tasked with a harder schedule. Now, certain stuff has not gone our way. It's pretty obvious, and that's the Giants' own fault in certain scenarios. I thought the Giants would lose against Dallas. If you guys go back to my predictions, back in May, I believe we did them. May predictions. I said the Giants would lose to Dallas, win against Arizona. Now, I was flip-flopping based on the Brock Purdy injury, whether the New York Giants would take a win against the 49ers. And I'm pretty sure I went with a loss. So the season has started out as I expected, possibly 1-2. Of course, this game is yet to be played, but if it ends up as being a Giants loss, it will be 1-2. Okay? And then you got a harder schedule down the line, the Seahawks. That's a game that's going to be real interesting. It's going to be telling for some. And then Miami, you got Buffalo, who's looked, in the middle of things. And then you got home against Washington and a team in the New York Jets. But what is my point in all this? You do expect some players to play better, right? You do expect Evan Neal to take a little bit of a jump. You do expect Kayvon Thibodeaux to take a little bit of a jump. I'm not going to sit here and ask, Kayvon Thibodeaux to get 5 sacks in the first 2 games. I'm not doing that. I don't really think anyone's doing that. But, I really want to see on this game film how much impact he's having, because a lot of people gave him a pass in week 1. Okay, they didn't do a lot of true pass sets. The Giants were down by a substantial number when the defense was on the field. But it is right to question, in my opinion, this guy's 5th overall pick. And you're telling me he didn't make a tackle and only had 1 quarterback pressure and 1 quarterback hit against the Cardinals? It's also an interesting thing to bring up is Wink had him in coverage 26% of the defensive snaps against the Cardinals. I don't know particularly what he's doing. And I like Wink. I like his aggressive system. Much better than Patrick Graham. But the Giants need as many rushers as possible. They need as much pressure as possible. Azeez is out. Even with him on the field, sometimes he's inconsistent. So I don't understand why Kayvon is being put in coverage at a 26% rate. And, of course, that's where you could kind of evenly split the blame, Wink's doing his own thing, which is not necessarily the best. And I have my own complaints about Wink, but they have to find something to do within these next few weeks because it's not going to get any easier. And then you got Kayvon Thibodeaux. His comments, I didn't like, but I'm not going to go haywire. Because half of what he said is right. And listen, I get it. The New York media is getting to him a little bit. And it's a tough place to play. I get it. Right? But you got to take that in stride, in my opinion. I know it's not easy because, hell, more people dislike him and more people probably trash his play than trash what I do or trash what some of you do at your jobs or something like that. I'm just coming up with something. But all I'm saying is it is right to criticize him. And he was talking about, fans were booing us in the first half and stuff like that. My guy, there's not going to be cheers when the Giants are down 20-0. Now, if they were a good team and the Giants were down by 7 at halftime, okay, I see what you got there. But the Giants look like a bunch of depressed Eeyores in week 1. And week 2, the first half, that's what they look like. So, I'm not saying I'm out on Kayvon, Azeez. Well, Azeez more likely. Kayvon, Neal, all these different guys. But it's not necessarily the wrong thing to do to criticize them. Because at that point, you're just being a homer. You expect first-round picks to be impact players. They need to be impact players in a positive light. As for Evan Neal, let's switch to him. I know everybody's talking about moving him inside the guard and stuff like that. This game is going to be telling in a lot of different areas. And the Giants' game plan is going to be telling in a lot of different areas. Are they going to chip the guy who's rushing on Evan Neal? Whether it's Drake Jackson, I think Samson Ebukam is still there. If he's not, he's somewhere else. And then the obvious one, Nick Bosa. We drafted Evan Neal to play dominant, or at least play at a solid level against some of these guys, like the Bosas of the world, Khalil Mack, all these edge rushers we're talking about. Now, again, what I asked of him in week 1 is you don't have to play dominant, just give Daniel Jones enough time, and they didn't do that. Now, of course, kind of combine that with Mark Lewinsky, but it's going to be arguably a tougher task this week because you've got McKeithen to your left side, being Evan Neal, and you're going up against a ferocious front. Lewinsky's going to be at left guard. Schmitz is probably going to look stupid at times. I'm not saying look stupid as he's dumb. No. But they, knowingly a veteran front and a veteran defensive coordinator in Steve Wilks, will try to confuse the protections. They'll try to confuse signals for John Michael Schmitz, Daniel Jones, and the New York Giants. So, And I think Adoree Jackson also said something about Twitter GMs and stuff like that. Again, it's just like, I get it. The fans don't matter to a sense, but they are the ones paying the salaries. They're coming to the games. They're rooting you on. And it's not like we want to see them fail. We don't. If you do, you might be an opposing fan. But we don't want to see them fail. Like this, every Giants fan, or at least most Giant fans, were hyped up coming into the season, right? Football's back, especially a lot of these Yankee Met fans. If you're a baseball fan, you were coming into the season, oh, fuck baseball. Football's back, baby. You think the Giants fans that are baseball fans really wanted to come in, see their team get ass kicked in week 1 on national television, and in week 2, obviously you have to win. But, again, part of what they're saying is right. I think they should ignore some of the criticism they're getting, but also up their game. Like, Adoree Jackson hasn't looked the greatest in the last 2 weeks, right? A lot of people, I know they're talking about Thibodeaux and this guy and that guy, whatever. I'll get to him in more of the game plan, because I do want to get to some other stuff. A lot of people aren't talking about Leonard Williams and the way he's just flat out disappeared, in my opinion. But I digress. So let's go to things to look for. I would definitely look, and there's a zillion ways this game's going to go. Like, I'm not saying, it's going to be pass heavy, run heavy. There's a lot of ways that this can go. Defensively, I have no idea what the Giants are going to do. This is like the first time I have no idea what the Giants are going to do. And I can't really give you an idea because, in my opinion, in most situations, it's a no-win. If you rush 4 and drop 7, I highly doubt that the New York Giants are going to get there. I'm going to be honest. PFF grades the rest of the 49ers offensive line other than Trent Williams bad, but we haven't taken care of business ourselves. So that could say to, Wink could say, okay, we're going to rush 4, drop 7 in coverage, and Purdy has time to maneuver in the pocket and just fires it into his zone because we haven't been playing man coverage like we've expected, right? I mean, this is going to be a tough test, I'm going to be honest with y'all, for the rookie corners. So I would expect them to have their struggles. And it's duly noted. Juwan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, Adoree Jackson possibly going up against Deebo Samuel. Honestly, if you want my very unpopular opinion, you want to throw a test at these rookie corners, even though they're already getting a test, maybe you want to make it easier on some certain things. I would put Adoree Jackson half of the time on Deebo and half of the time on George Kittle. Because the Giants really can't cover tight ends. Last week, they gave up a ton of yards to Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz is a shell of himself, but he's still got some gas in the tank. George Kittle's one of the best when he's on the field. Make no mistake about it. So if you got Pinnock on Kittle, Kittle's probably going to have about north of 65 receiving yards. Possibly a touchdown. So I personally would maybe experiment with that. Because I think this game, to be honest, is an experimental game, but it's also a progression game. Like, you have to see some sort of progress to think that, okay, the Giants can go on Monday night and beat the Seahawks. Not that it's a sure thing, because it's not a sure thing. But you have to go out there and just show something. As I've been saying a lot, you got to show something. So maybe balance Adoree on Kittle and Deebo Samuel. And Deonte Banks could go up against Ayuk, he could go up against Samuel, because guess what? He's going to have to, more likely than not, face tough wide receivers in this league. There's a ton of talent. Not to mention, Adoree Jackson's on his final year of the contract. If Adoree Jackson ain't brought back, you know damn well that the Giants are going to be relying on Deonte Banks as corner 1. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And you know what? You drafted a 3rd-round pick last year in Cordell Flott. Put him on the outside against Juwan Jennings. I don't really see how that could hurt. Or if Juwan Jennings is in the slot, you maneuver however you can. If you're playing zone, factor Darnay Holmes in there. There's a lot of things you could do. There really is. And this depending, may or may not be a game that I criticize Wink for. Because, in my opinion, I'm not throwing in the fucking white towel. That's just not happening. I'm not throwing the white flag, doing all this, whatever. But they have a lot of horses on offense. If they have enough time to get that ball out, and unfortunately we don't have the pass rush to do it, I think we overrated our pass rush. If Wink throws 7 and Purdy gets that ball out in time, or there's a fuck up in coverage downfield, that's an explosive play, and that's negative in terms of momentum for the Giants, positive for the 49ers. Now, if they do throw 3, 4, maybe 5 at the offensive line of the 49ers, if they don't get there, Purdy's going to pick these zones apart. And I don't really think that Wink has done a ton of man blitzes. He's done sometimes. So I remember, obviously, the Adoree catch where last week that guy, I don't remember the receiver, he caught it out of bounds, juggled it a little bit. I believe it was Michael Wilson. But there was the challenge flag that came out there. There was a couple of receptions downfield. So that's when they attacked, in terms of man blitzes. But it's just going to be a multitude of things that the Giants will have to consider for a defensive game plan. And we haven't really touched on one particular thing, which is a multitude of things in itself. That's stopping Christian McCaffrey. The Giants have not been able to stop the run in the last 2 games. And I said before the Cardinals game, I'll give the Giants one more game to show me whether they could stop the run or not. Because I don't know if week 1 was a fluke. Right now it shows me that they didn't really stop the run well. And the problem with that is, and I'll say this too, I get it, right? You paid Raheem Nunez-Roches and A'Shawn Robinson to be those run stuffers. DJ Davidson also factoring in, maybe they'll put in Jordan Riley, which I would expect maybe for this game because, hey, Christian McCaffrey's a running back. But the substitutions, they did not work last week. 3 of the touchdowns that happened, Josh Dobbs and some of the other, carries and whatnot, Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams were not on the field. That's when they need to be playing. Like, you could talk about maybe a 3rd and 10 or this, that, and the other thing, and you're down by this or whatever the case may be, and I get it. Once again, you don't want to be playing these guys 90% of the snaps. But this is a game you need to be smart in that area. I will criticize Wink Martindale if that type of shit happens again. And I don't care, people who throw me the excuse, the 49ers are a much talented team, and we're not going to win this game anyway. No. You don't go into a game thinking they're the better team, they're going to win anyway, so it doesn't matter what we do. That's a terrible mentality. That really is. And I'm not saying be a homer, but that's a terrible mentality. So the Giants got to get it together. They got to get it together on defense. I know offense is a whole different thing. But Christian McCaffrey is the head of their offense right now, and I'm not knocking their receivers. I'm not knocking George Kittle. The Giants missed 12 tackles last week against the Arizona Cardinals. 4 of them were attributed to Micah McFadden. Now, I think Micah McFadden will bounce back. Now, let me say this, though. Yeah, they ran away from Okereke. I would play Isaiah Simmons more. It's 3 weeks in, really 4 because he played in the Jets game and they're obviously running over the install and stuff. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be a Pro Bowler, but hey, this guy's got athleticism. He's done nothing but play well so far. If you're not going to use him on blitzes, and which they've used him on blitzes, and they've used him on 3rd downs and short yardage situations. Well, not really short yardage situations, but like if it's a 3rd and 19 and there's a check down, Simmons is there to make the stop and pretty much shove the guy out of bounds, which he's done well. And that's kind of why I want him to play a little bit more. Because if Michael McFadden isn't playing well in this game, I think Simmons needs to take it over. And he knows these guys. I mean, for the first few years of his career, he was playing against the 49ers twice a year. So, offensively, and I know this is not usually the way we do this segment for things to look for. It's a multitude of things. You got to figure a couple of things out, right? I don't think the Giants are going to lean on the running game, as they should not. Because if you're expecting the Barkley production out of Matt Breida, Eric Gray, Gary Brightwell, if you're expecting the Barkley production, which I know they aren't, but if you do, you're in for a loss already. You've already lost the game. The Giants, and they really couldn't do this the first 2 weeks. And I've said this, look, I'm more of an analytical football fan. Baseball, I'm old school, which is kind of hypocritical. I don't give two shits, though. You need the pass to set up the run. You need the pass to set up the run. Because, I'm going to be honest with you, they know Matt Breida. They know he was not, he's not the same guy he was in San Fran many years ago. Eric Gray is going to be making his debut in the backfield. Gary Brightwell maybe has one rush this season. You think that the 49ers defense is scared of that? And it's not like our O-line is this power blocking, run O-line. Yeah, they're the best in run block win rate. No. They're not. Let's be honest. They're facing a challenge themselves. So what the Giants need to do is what they did in the second half. Now, that bears on a lot of different things. Get Daniel Jones moving. Play action. I'm not talking just bootlegs, because they really didn't do that a lot last week in the second half, because the Cardinals would have read it like Dallas read it in week 1. They started opening up play action more. They went to Hyatt a couple of times. That's what you need to do. And experiment with it. Darren Waller downfield. See who they match up. Is it going to be Fred Warner? Is it going to be Dre Greenlaw? Is it going to be Talanoa Hufanga? Is it going to be one of the corners? The Giants, again, we've been talking ad nauseum how this offense has so much speed. This offense is this. This offense is that. Well, you know what? They ranked 22nd against the pass. So you know what? Go out there and make something of it. We're talking about Daniel Jones beating better defenses. I know maybe some people will come after this, him this game if he doesn't do well, or vice versa. If he does well, and they'll say, no, it's the 20s. I still figure that this is one of the best defenses in the league. Maybe they're off to a slow start in the passing game. They just give up a lot of yards, but they're winning football games, right? They're not the Vikings where they're fraudulent. Gonna be honest there. So the Giants will need to figure something out. And also the quick game, you could also get that into. But that might be a little bit more readable for the defense of the San Francisco 49ers. That might be more readable because we kind of showcased that in week 1. We showcased that in week 2. If they're playing off coverage, fine. But make sure they don't jump routes, because if they start jumping routes and you keep throwing the quick game at them, it's not going to end well. And the Giants do not under any circumstances have the ability to come back when they're down in the turnover differential. Because the Giants have been that way 2 straight games this season. The 1 interception, 2 interceptions from how many weeks ago? The Giants haven't had a turnover yet. And we'll talk about that in keys to win and all these different things. But offensively and defensively, it's going to be interesting to see how Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, and Wink Martindale match this thing up. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to be interesting to see how they mock this thing up. If you honestly had to ask me how the Giants are going to go defensively, and I know I said before I have no idea, I probably would go out and say something along the lines of they're probably going to play zone. Which the negative thing about that is you're giving up yards, time of possession, and the Giants don't have a running game, let alone a run-blocking offensive line against that front to sit there and stay in the game. And the defense hasn't performed well either. So those are things to look for. I just broke it down a little bit. But we got to go into players to watch. Brock Purdy. I mean, you put any quarterback in a Kyle Shanahan system and it's going to be a success for them. Unless you're a fucking idiot. Unless you don't know football. 66.7% completion. He has yet to throw an interception, 2 touchdowns, 213 yards per game, 426 yards so far. I mean, he's efficient. I think that's the best word. It's not, oh, he's talented. He's super talented. He's this, he's that. No, he's efficient. That's all they need him to be. In that system with the weapons they have, that's all he needs to be. Efficient. He probably, honestly, doesn't need to throw for 4,000 yards. Will he get there? I don't know. But he doesn't need to throw for this many touchdowns or this many touchdowns this game. That's why stats are overlooked sometimes. Because many people do intend to focus on, let's just say, Brock Purdy. I mean, in the end of the day, is he going to get you a Super Bowl? I don't know. But in the regular season, I mean, if he gets you downfield, if he just dumps it off to the weapons he's got, I mean, he ain't got to do much else and just maneuver in the pocket. Christian McCaffrey, 134 rushing yards per game thus far, 268 total this season, 6.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. He is an absolute must-stop. The Giants couldn't stop him last year with the Panthers, though they did not win the game. They got to stop him. They got to neutralize him. They have to not fuck up in that area. Because we could talk about the passing game, we could talk about this, we could talk about that, whatever. If Christian McCaffrey starts off the game with a big run, you might pack it in at that point. Gonna be honest with you. Because that is a momentum changer. And we've seen this Giants team, as positive as we've been coming off this, winning thing against the Cardinals, sometimes they will duck their heads and hang their heads like Eeyore. So, McCaffrey is a start to neutralizing what that offense could look like. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. I'll go over that. Ayuk is their leading receiver. 2 touchdowns, 172 yards, 11 receptions. Deebo Samuel has yet to catch a touchdown. He's got 118 yards, 11 receptions. Also, he's been using the backfield too, which is really no surprise to anyone. Samuel thus far has 7 carries for 46 yards. Also, their backups, Elijah Mitchell and stuff like that. But we're not going to focus too much on that. Juwan Jennings, 2 receptions, 51 yards. And George Kittle, 6 receptions for 49 yards. Again, Ayuk, other than that, none of the guys have a touchdown. So this could be a breakout game for them. This may not be. Who knows? Anyway, moving forward, the offensive line has given up 4 sacks, which is 2 sacks per game. Trent Williams has been Trent Williams. He's unstoppable. Spencer Burford got a 0.0, I think, pass blocking grade last week against the Niners. Last week against the Niners. What am I talking about? Last week for the Niners against the Rams. Now, guaranteed you are going up against a tough defensive front in the Los Angeles Rams. But 0.0 isn't great. And McKivitz, he's got some low grades. And Brendell's an average center. And Aaron Banks coming out of Notre Dame, he's an average guard. But they make it work because of the quick game. You don't really see too many long developing plays. But let's talk about the defense. They have a shit ton of talent. And I don't think that's any exaggeration. Eric Armstead, who's been there, I think this is like 2015, so he might be the longest tenured, if not one of the longest tenured San Francisco 49ers. 4 tackles, 4 quarterback pressures, 1 quarterback hit, no sacks on the season. Javon Hargrave, 1 sack, a quarterback hit, 2 quarterback pressures, 4 tackles. He was signed from the Eagles, as we all know. Drake Jackson, who came out of, I think it was USC a year or 2 ago. A lot of people didn't like him. He had 3 sacks in his first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 7 quarterback pressures, and 4 tackles. Before we get to the linebackers, this guy is an obvious. Nick Bosa, the brother of Joey Bosa. Nick Bosa just got a huge payday. Nick Bosa is also looking for his first sack of the season. And he's going to be going up against Evan Neal or Josh Azudu. And Nick Bosa is probably going to win those matchups, but the Giants have to try and neutralize. They really do. Daniel Bellinger, I think, is going to be one of the most important parts of this game. I really do. I think they need him more involved in the offense. Maybe you chip Bosa with Bellinger to whoever's side, like a chip and release, a block and release type thing, and maybe they focus on the other weapons downfield that leaves Bellinger open. I think that's something they honestly should experience with, because Bellinger, he's not a guy that drops passes a lot. Not a lot of separation, but he's going to catch the football. So I think he's, honestly, might be an X factor this game. But yeah, Bosa, he's going to be looking for his first NFL sack. And if I'm going to be honest with you, he might get it this game. let's take Might out of that conversation, actually. He's going to get his first NFL sack this game. Dre Greenlaw, 18 tackles already on the season, a tackle for a loss, a quarterback pressure, one quarterback hit, 0 sacks. In coverage, 55.6 completion percentage, passer rating is 97.9, 2 touchdowns given up. So, he's a solid box tackler. Again, stopping the run. They're one of the best at that. If you get him matched up on Darren Waller, I would take Darren Waller in that matchup. I know these stats might be deceiving. Maybe he locks down Darren Waller, but again, the worry about him and Fred Warner is the running game. And Fred Warner, let's talk about him for 1 second as I pull up his stats. And we also have the corners to go over as well. So as far as Fred Warner goes, 64.3% completion, lower passer rating, 89, 112 yards given up, and no touchdowns. So, again, you got to look into the stats a little bit just to decipher completion percentage, all these different things. But Warner, he's the mic of that defense. And, yeah, that's pretty much that. So you look at some other guys as well, just to throw in there. Charvarius Ward, who's in his second year with the 49ers after leaving the Chiefs. 61.1 completion percentage allowed in coverage. He's their number one corner. A 56 passer rating, which is good. You're looking at one of their other corners, Demadre Lenoir. He's got a 75% completion percentage allowed, no touchdowns, 72.9, passer rating 140 yards. So I would look to attack him a little bit. He right now is their second corner, and then their third corner is a guy who used to be an Atlanta Falcon. I believe he had an interception last week, too, off of Matt Stafford, and that was Isaiah Oliver. 72.7% completion, 46.4 passer rating, 57 yards. And once again, I say this all the time, with slot corners, you really have to take into account the completion percentage with a grain of salt because it could be like 80%. But the passer rating and the touchdowns and the yards being low is a good thing. Like, that's going to be separate from the completion percentage. Again, if you guys know how to read these stats, if you don't, I'm here to decipher. So anyway, moving forward, let's take a look at top matchups. Trent Williams, Colton McKivitz versus Kayvon Thibodeaux. I bet you that Ross Dwelley is going to be a chip helper if he's going up against Colton McKivitz. Obviously, O'Shane Ximenez or one of the linebackers off the roster is going to play. Right now, they only uploaded Jalen Thomas, who's coming off the practice squad. He's a backup offensive tackle who's undrafted free agent at SMU. I don't think he plays. He's just an elevation type guy. So I'd look for Ross Dwelley to maybe do some chips against Kayvon Thibodeaux alongside Colton McKivitz. Trent Williams, I mean, I don't expect any, chips or anything. Being that Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the NFL alongside Andrew Thomas. Xavier McKinney or Jason Pinnock versus George Kittle. I would give the favoritism towards George Kittle right there because I'm going to be honest, again, George Kittle, one of the dominating tight ends in this league. The Giants really couldn't cover tight ends last week. If you put Adoree Jackson on George Kittle, kind of like the Giants did James Bradbury on Darren Waller a few years ago, I would kind of experiment with that plan a little bit because you never know. And that just gives more of a test to Banks, which he's going to have anyway, more of a test to Hawkins, which he's going to have anyway, and Cordell Flott. Put him in the game. You drafted him in the third round, make some usage. Deonte Banks versus Brandon Ayuk, Trey Hawkins versus Jawan Jennings, and Deebo Samuel versus Adoree Jackson. Again, I think they're going to play mostly zone. That's just my personal opinion. But if they play man, it's going to be more of an anticipated matchup. And if they do play man, I think the Giants might have better success. Underrated opinion, hot take. Let's go to our sponsor real quick before we get to anything else. And our sponsor is SeatGeek. So for the first time in the history of this channel, over 1.5K subs strong, we have an official sponsor that is SeatGeek. So if you're going to a concert, if you're going to a Giants game, a Jets game, any ball game, or you need parking passes are expensive as fuck. Well, guess what? We can help you out with that. Get $20 off with our promo code Big Blue in the Bronx. That's the name of the podcast, name of the channel, nothing abbreviated, all that different stuff. So before we go into everything else, I just want to say we're not going to have a 49ers guy on. I feel like I've gone with this show long enough, but I couldn't find one. All of them decided not to answer me, which is fine and well. I don't take that personally. People just don't respond. It's part of the business. So no 49er guy, hoping to get the Seahawk guy we had last year on the show again. So keys to win. Number one, in my opinion, is going to be stop the run. It needs to be stop the run. That is where most of their focus is on offense. Talk about Deebo Samuel. You can talk about George Kittle. You can talk about this, that, and the other thing. Stop the run. McCaffrey, I could literally read it to you right now. His first game against the Steelers, 152 yards, 116 against the Rams. And it's not like he wasn't a factor in those games, always just 100 yards and he didn't get a touchdown. No, he dominated those games. They're top tier in terms of rushing offense. So if we're looking at Nunez, Roches, Ashawn, Leo, Dex, the linebackers we got, if we're talking all this smack about the Giants upgraded to stop the run, it's time to show it here. It is. I'm not saying limit him to 50 yards, but don't make him go off, please. Because that will be a momentum changer. That will be a game changer. Number two, get pressure. That's going to be one of the bigger ones, in my opinion. It's going to be tough, I'm not going to lie to you, to get pressure. But it needs to be done. The Giants don't have a sack at all this season. You could talk about pressures and stats and all these different things, and I bring that up every time because it gives you a different side of the analytics. But you got to get pressure. This offensive line ain't perfect. They do a quick game. Press up against those receivers, and it's hard to do. Again, I think the Giants are going to go zone here. But we want to see progression. We don't want to just come out of this game, oh yeah, we won by a hair. Listen, I'll take a win over a loss any single day of the year. But I want to see progression from Leo. He's going in some favorable matchups here. But then again, it might not be favorable because he's been missing. He's on a milk carton for the last 2 games. Kayvon, if he's going up against McKivitz, he's not getting chipped by Dwelly and Kittle. I don't know. I'd look into that matchup. Hey, listen, you got to force pressure on the quarterback. And even then, the Giants need to get home with their blitzes. We could talk about this, that, and the other thing about Wink putting Kayvon in coverage and the Giants not getting home with their blitzes. Well, guess what? Somehow, it just needs to happen. It does. Number 3. I was thinking one of 2 things here, and I'll give an honorable mention in a sec. Win the turnover battle. The Giants have not done that the last 2 games. Turnovers are key. Purdy isn't a guy who turns the ball over. I think he had 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions last year. That's not a lot. That's comparable eerily to Daniel Jones' numbers in a full 16-game span. So he does not turn over the football a lot. Make him turn over the football a lot. If you're seeing on film, they do a lot of these slant routes, jump them. Jump them. And you know what? Make them rethink their offense a little bit. If you're getting pressure, if you're sitting there jumping these routes, and they start to reinvent the wheel and do all these different things, adjust. Halftime adjustment is going to be key. And my honorable mention would probably be getting the passing game going. Do what you did in the second half. More creative routes. Build off those routes. Right? They did that a lot last year. You're not going to have the Saquon Barkley running game. It's just not going to happen. But you need to get the passing game going. We want to talk about all these weapons? Use them. Obviously, the line has to block. Obviously, Daniel Jones has to look and find these guys. He can't miss throws. Because, again, as much as Daniel Jones is a hard worker and everything, when it comes down to it, $40 million, he needs to beat some tougher teams. And he needs to be competitive against tougher teams. So there's that. Score prediction. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I have the New York Giants taking the L in this one. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like a lot of people say. I'm going to say 24-10. I don't think the Giants will get much done on offense. I think you might see a bit of a peak yardage game for the 49ers, but I don't think they'll turn a lot of that into scoring. I don't think it's going to be a 31-10 game. I think it's going to be 24. And then hopefully we can take some positives. And I'm not for moral victories, but hopefully we can take some positives move it in to the next week and beat Seattle. But like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pop video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Share this out if you haven't already. Do all the good stuff. Again, trying to get to that 1.6K mark. Appreciate you guys. And let's go Big Blue. Let's get another W.